Hey everybody, it's me, Chris. I'm back over here in the kitchen. I was out holiday shopping at Costco the other night, and they had a sale on these whole New York strip steaks. This is prime New York strip, and I just want to show you what that means. If you look over here on my iPad, you can see there's less than 2% of beef is considered USDA prime. It's got really great marbling and flavor. Choice would be the mid-grade, which is usually what I buy, on a regular basis. And then select is a good quality steak as well, just not as much marbling and not as much flavor. So I don't eat a lot of red meat, but when I do get red meat, I like to spend some money, as much as I can afford, to try and get the best quality. So these were on sale. I mean, this whole boneless New York strip was $176, but it was $25 off. Cost me about 150 bucks. So, you know, pretty expensive. But, you know, when you go out to eat and buy a steak similar to this, you're going to pay about 35 bucks at least. And I'm going to get, you know, about 16 servings out of this. So close to $600 worth of steak here, retail value. All right. So, but there's three main benefits to doing this yourself. Number one, less handling, right? Less people touching your food when you trim it yourself. Less hands on your steak. Number two is, and it's a big one, is the price. The price per pound here is $12.99 a pound untrimmed. If you bought these steaks already prepped and cut, it cost you closer to $20 a pound. So you're going to save 40, 50, 60% per pound by trimming it yourself. And then the third benefit is you can customize it and cut any size steaks you want. So I have a tape measure here, which I recommend if you do this, get yourself a approximate measurement. This one's about 18 inches long, and so if I want a 1-inch steak, which is a nice size steak, I'm going to get 16 nice steaks out of this when you factor in the trim. So those are the three main benefits to doing it yourself. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to show you how to break this whole thing down. I recommend you use a large 10-inch chef knife to cut your steaks, and you need a smaller boning knife to trim the fat and clean this thing up. I also recommend, I got 2 cookie sheets here with some foil lining them. I have one with some paper towel. I'm going to use that. I'm going to wash this off and pat it dry on the paper towel. And then I have a clean pan with foil for when I cut my steaks. They need a nice clean spot to land until I'm ready to package them up and put them in the freezer. So I'm going to turn this over on the fat side, and I'm just going to cut it open in the sink, take off the wrapper, and I'm going to give it a quick wash. All right, so this is cleaned. I patted it dry, and just make sure your sink is clean before you put this in there, because you want it to be decontaminated. All right, I put it back on my pan. I patted it all dry, and before I start the trim, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down to size so it's easier to work with. So I want to cut it into 4 large pieces. I'm going to cut this in half, and then each half into half, and then we'll start to trim, okay? And you can measure it, but I'm just going to eyeball it here. So that's 1, 2, and 3. All right, so I got these cut, and now what happens is, first of all, you can see inside here. You can see how nicely marbled this is, but you can also see where the fat is and where you need to go to trim. So it's just going to make it a lot easier. And then the other thing I recommend, I keep some extra paper towels on the side here, so you can just kind of clean as you go, okay? So now for each one of these pieces, I'm just going to start to trim. So you can see here, this is just one big piece of fat. So with my smaller knife, I'm going to come in and just start to trim away all this excess fat, okay? You don't want to take it all, but you just want to take the big pieces, any sinew or silver skin, just start to trim away, just like this. And so I'm working on the underside here, and you can see, I mean, some of this is solid white fat. That's good fat. That'll render down when you cook it. So, I mean, it all depends on how much you like. And then on the end here, you can see this big piece kind of hanging off a little bit, right? So I trim that off. Some people will keep that on and they like the fat, But see, I'm going to just follow the shape of the steak here. And I'm just going to trim that whole end piece off. Just like that. Well, you know, there's still some good pieces of meat and some good fat in this end. So, you know, if you have a meat grinder like I do, typically what I'll do, I'll trim this up and I'll save it for meatballs or for making chopped meat. So the underside here, I mean, it looks pretty good to me. There was a tiny piece of bone I found as well. I just cut that out. I'll take a tiny bit more fat off of here. Okay. And I'm going to flip this over. And now for the cap, okay? Just, you see here, see this streaky looking thin film? That's what's called the silver skin. So, and again, why you need this skinny knife, a boning knife, just get under there and just point it upwards and just start to trim that away. You want to try not to waste any meat if you can. Just help it along, pull it up and just kind of help it along so you don't waste any of the steak. And then I'm just gonna start to trim this side, same way, just little by little, just take this fat cap off of there until I see just the actual meat itself. All right, sometimes it's, you know, it's kind of like curled up into itself a little bit, and you need to work the knife a bit to get these bigger pieces off. But I mean, I think this looks pretty good. I mean, you don't need to get rid, again, you don't need to get rid of all the fat, but you want to try and get rid of, for me anyway, I want to get rid of most of it. So just take this end piece off right here. And don't worry if it doesn't look uniform. I mean, you can shape this after you're done. So, I mean, this looks pretty good. And now this would be perfect for Christmas dinner, for a nice roast. So I would probably recommend using it for that. But I'm going to show you how to trim the steaks out of this now. So what I do at this point, I got it trimmed the way I want. It's ready to go. So again, I come in with my big knife. Okay, and you can see it's about 2 inches on each side. When I cut this in half, I'm just going to cut. And then I'm going to cut each one of these halves in half. And I do have a sharp knife. You really need a sharp knife to make sure that you can do this safely. You don't want a dull knife that can slip. So just like that, I've got 4 really, really nice, about 1 inch New York strip steaks. And you can see just how good they look, okay? And this is typically what you would see in a pack when you go and buy it in the supermarket. You can kind of level them out and make sure they're nice and even. So that's all there is to it. So I'm going to trim the rest of these and then I'll show you how I package them up. All right, so this is what it looks like when you're done. I got 12 really nice steaks here that I'm going to package up, and I have a nice large roast, which is enough for at least 4 people. I'm going to save this. This is going to be for Christmas. So what I recommend, and you can see all the trim, by the way, I have here. I mean, trimmed a ton of fat off of there. And now I'm very meticulous when it comes to trimming the fat. I mean, you could trim as little or as much as you want. I mean, you could always, to speed things up, or if you like the fat, you could leave more on. It makes it quicker. You can cook it that way. You can just eat around it. It's not a big deal. It's, you know, really a matter of taste. But what I recommend is, I like to use a vacuum sealer to freeze these. And I'll usually do, I mean, these are pretty large steaks. But I'll usually do 2 per pack. But I feel if most people, I feel, will use a Ziploc bag, which is fine. So I'll just place it in 2 at a time. And then the key is just make sure you get as much air out of there as possible before you seal it up and put it in the freezer. So I'm just gonna package these up and get them ready to put away. All right, so we're done. I already vacuum sealed everything. So I have my 12 steaks here. I have my Christmas roast. I'm just putting it in a Ziploc bag to make things easier. But these are ready to go in the freezer. And so hopefully this process helps you. And time-wise, yeah, it may seem intimidating at first, but I got to tell you, this took 1 hour, a little less than 1 hour, start to finish. That's prepping everything, that's cleaning it, butchering it, doing the dishes, everything's done in 1 hour. I have my wife helping me and filming this video, of course, but You know, if you're doing this at home and you're not worried about filming and making takes and stuff like that uninterrupted, this whole process should take about a half hour. And you know what? You're going to get a much better quality product than what you would buy prepackaged, and you're going to save yourself a ton of money by doing it this way. So next time you're at Costco and you see those big hunks of meat, the whole New York strips in the case, don't run away. You don't need to be scared. You can definitely do this. You need to have the right knives and a nice size cutting board to do this, but anybody can do this. So if you love steak, I recommend you try it out. And I thank you for watching the video. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for taking the time to check this out. See you on the next video.